Welcome to the first ever episode of 220 Gals, the Redemption podcast. Today, I'm going to be interviewing my co-host, Jessica, where we're going to be talking about the crux of this podcast. It's all about Galatians 2:20. No longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the before and after process, before when you lived in the world, when you were just doing what the world told you to do, getting lost, being in the mix of all the things that actually don't lead to life, but lead to destruction. That was Jessica. She was going down all the paths, and she's going to tell us about them and then how God intervened on her life in a radical way, changed her life forever, and now she's living for Christ. There's so much jam-packed in this episode. We're excited for you to join us. We're very excited.
We're very excited.
Well, welcome to the very first episode of 220 Gals, the Redemption podcast. I'm Dr. Amber.
And I'm Jessica.
And we're the 220 Gals. So we're going to start and kick it off by just reading Galatians 2:20, because that's actually what this podcast is founded on. So it is, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So this whole podcast is going to break that down in every way possible. It's essentially, we are two women who were very lost in the wilderness of the world. We were living for the world. We were doing what the world said to do. In so many different ways, which we're going to be getting into. And it led us to dead ends. It led me to severe sickness. It led to financial issues. It led to relationship problems. It led to anything you can imagine, really. It led to destruction in our lives, and we didn't recognize that until the Lord intervened. And he intervened in lots of different ways, and we gave our lives to the Lord. And so this journey is about how we were lost, and now we are found in Christ. And it's no longer us who live, but Christ who lives in us. So we're the 220 Gals, and we cannot wait to share the testimonies of the different folks who have just impacted our lives because God has impacted them. And today I'm going to be interviewing my co-host, Jessica. And, what's beautiful, Jessica has a wild testimony and a beautiful testimony. God just intervened on your life in a way I personally have never seen in my entire life. And what's really cool, we will be bringing on your husband in the future, where you guys will get to talk about just how you met and the testimony around that, because that's incredible.
Insane.
I've never seen it. And it really, I think it'll give so much hope to people, women out there who are feeling like they're in it with the Lord and just are waiting on their promises. So anyways, I think we should get started. And Jessica, I just want you to give us a picture of who you used to be. Like, what was your life like? And who, and what were you believing in? How are you walking with the world?
Well, I mean, I think that it's very important to start with my relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And, I grew up in a household where my mom made it she said, it's up to you. Mm-hmm. You can decide if you want to go down that route, but we do not. Mm-hmm. And we never had a Bible in our house. So of course, I'm going to follow the influence of my mother. Yeah. And so I had gone to church a couple times, but I always got this like weird, icky feeling anyways. And so because it wasn't a big thing or a priority in our household, it just never became a priority for me. And so I was living very much in the world, trying to figure out everything myself. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest thing, is that I thought that I had to figure it all out. I thought that I had to control everything. It was all me. And
why was that? Like, tell us why that was a belief that you were holding.
Well, I think I never initially had a spirituality or a spiritual side. I wasn't ever, it took me a long time to even believe into a spiritualness. And so because with the influences of my childhood, to give a little background, I grew up where my father walked out of my life when I was 6 months old. And so that, I think, is what kind of started it all.
Yeah.
And, you know, my mother did the best that she possibly could. But then I did have a stepdad from the ages of 3 to 20, but it was never that fatherly emotional love.
Yeah.
He was in the military, so it was very much a military lifestyle. And, you know, my parents, or my mom and my stepdad, definitely had their own relationship issues that I got to witness. And I think a lot of it turned into like survival mode.
Yeah.
And with me and my mother, you know, and the difficulties of their relationship, we just went through a lot of like valleys and hills. Sometimes it was good, sometimes it was the darkest thing ever.
Yeah.
And so I just really had to, because of two father figures leaving me, and, you know, you kind of grow up seeing other people and their fathers, they don't leave, they have a really good relationship. I've created like an abandonment wound.
Yeah.
And then because it was me and my mom in survival mode, I think that I just like took on this, like, I can't depend on anybody else, so I will figure it out, because I know that at least I can depend on myself. And if I say I'm going to do something, I know I'm going to follow through with it.
Yeah. And I kind of want to stop right there, because I like, just in what I've done, in the work that I've done in my own life, this is, I'd say, the crux of the issue for so many women out there, is not having a healthy masculine in the home, not having a healthy role model as a father, and then having a mother who's having to do it on her own. And that gets transferred to the daughter of like, okay, we've got to figure this out. And so that immediately puts you in your masculine and doesn't allow you to feel safe, trusted, and rested, which is what God wants for us. So you're already going down a path of it's on me. You know, and so much comes from that. And I just wanted to highlight that, because I think so many people will be able to relate to that.
Oh, absolutely. I think that many people, men and women, deal with not having a strong father figure.
Yeah.
And within the biblical roles, you have God at the top, and then you have the man, the woman, the children. And, you know, having that man as the leader of the household is, I now see how important it is. Like, women aren't meant to be a masculine, I can take it all, you know, I can do it. It really disrupts the natural harmonies that each, you know, a man and a woman carry. That
and we're
complement.
not designed for that.
Right.
We are designed for other more beautiful things, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. So you were really like, that's where the belief was implanted really young, that you had to do this all on your own. So how did that translate without like having a healthy father figure in the home later on in life? How did that translate for you as you were getting older?
Well, I will have to say that because I felt I had to figure it all out and I didn't have all the answers, one thing I'm grateful from the experience is it taught me to seek out. It taught me to be curious. It taught me to be okay with asking questions, because I do believe that I learned a lot through that.
Yeah.
But on the negative side of it, I started seeking things that I now see were not good for me. As a woman, as a redheaded woman, I was often, from, you know, being a child, complimented on my looks. I also fell into doing a lot of activities that included my looks. And because of that, and because that came easy for me, and because I didn't have, you know, I had a mother who was always nurturing and always just like, whatever idea I came up with, she was like, yeah, like, do it. You know, but I didn't have a father to be like, what are you doing? Like, no, let me guide you. Let me correct you.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I definitely fell into my physical appearance and took myself in a lot of different avenues, which I now see, you know, you women especially, like, your identity shouldn't be in your external appearance.
And yet it is for so many women.
You know, and it's constantly around us, whether you're watching TV, marketing, just, you know, everything. I remember even being in, what was it, like middle school, maybe we'll give it high school, but just doing like crazy diets because I would stand in front of the mirror and just like constantly pick up my love handles or just like pick out any insecurity, any imperfection, and, you know.
Well, and this is really important because you mentioned feeling abandoned when you were young in different ways. And it's important to distinguish, like, there can physically be someone in the home, but emotionally, if they're in survival mode, if they're gone a lot, if they just don't have the ability, then we can feel abandoned emotionally, which is what you were talking about with your stepdad. That abandonment, children tell themselves stories about that. What do you know, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but like, what do you think you told yourself about yourself, given that dad wasn't there?
Well, I mean, now unworthiness. I just always felt unworthy. I always felt like I had to prove myself. Like, let me, especially in relationships, I always felt this necessary with like my actions to prove like why I'm worthy to be with you. And, you know, a lot of that, because, you know, my looks came easy, a lot of that was performed through a lot of like sexual sin.
So that unworthiness, we naturally as human beings are going to do things to seek love. Like, if we don't feel that we're worthy, we're going to go and say, okay, well, what about me is worthy? And as you said, you got a lot of validation, compliments, praise for your body, for your looks. And I think as women specifically, this is an area that we feel needs to be polished. You know, this is the area that means we are worthy. And I would just want to highlight, that is the world. The world says that, because Jesus doesn't say that. Not even close. But the world says that's. So of course you go on that path. So where did that lead you, knowing like that was your way of getting love? That was your way of feeling worthy. What paths did that lead you down to?
So what's interesting now that I'm able to look back is I started with cheerleading. Cheerleading was, I love being on stage. Since a very young child, I loved being on stage. It's like this thrill of, it's kind of scary, but then it's also exciting. You have an audience, you're in the limelight. And so I really loved cheerleading, and I did all-stars. And so school cheerleading and all-star cheerleading is very different. All-stars is way more glitz and glamour. I almost like think of it as like very pageant-like. But with that, you're wearing crop tops, you're wearing tiny little skirts because you're like tumbling around, which I get to a certain extent of why the uniforms are the way they are. But I would say that's where it started. And then after high school is actually when my parents were going through the divorce, and it was kind of like finally, but also a lot of, you know, things are releasing, breaking off. And so I just needed to get away from the home. And so I fell in love with the gym. And at our gym, there was a woman, she was very muscular, but I knew she competed. And because I needed an outlet just to fully just fall into, I decided to start competing, bodybuilding. So the bikini division. And, you know, although it was such a beautiful experience and I knew I was going to take so many monumental learning lessons, I learned through that. At the end of the day, you're walking on a stage, the tiniest you've ever been. You're constantly critiquing yourself. You're having actually a coach also critique you. You're trying to mold your body to look a certain way on stage. And the best part, well, not the best part, but the judges are all men. That are critiquing. And so if you give yourself like a bird's eye perspective on it, like you're morphing your body to then be judged by men.
And the messages that's sending to you as a woman.
And it's more like, okay, my worth to men comes from the way that I look.
And we're not saying that cheerleading and bodybuilding are bad things, right? It's just how insidiously you chose things, maybe consciously or unconsciously, that was going to reaffirm I'm worthy through these different avenues you took. And this is kind of what all human beings do. We all look for, okay, what am I good at? Where do I get validation? Where do I feel valued? And we go to that. And so if we don't have a home that knows how to bring a child up for feeling valued in their identity in God, they're going to go look for their identity in the world. And that's exactly, and I did it too, it's like you'll look for your identity in the world, and the world will say to women, you need to look a certain way. You need to have a certain weight, your bust, your booty, all these things, right? And so you went down that path. So what happened to you as you were in bodybuilding? Where did it go from there?
Well, kind of to add on to, if you don't have Jesus that helps guide and direct you into the identity in which he has created for you, you go searching and you go after things that give you the validation. With bodybuilding, I did well. I got first and second place.
Amazing.
Right. Which, now looking back, I can see that it just fed that identity. It fed that ego. Like, oh, well, I look great. I'm going to keep going. Even though at the time it was like, oh, I put in all this work, all this dedication to get my body a certain way, and now I'm getting rewarded for it. Yeah. But there's, a kind of a gray line when it comes to it. Yeah. So I had done that, and then actually, so I competed my first time, and it was before I was 21. And so I, thought, well, I'm still young. I need to go party. I was transferring from a community college to a university. And so this was my time to shine.
This is it.
So I wanted to have the college experience. I wanted to join a sorority, and that's exactly what I did. I joined the sorority. I partied my face off. People often associated me with my bodybuilding, so it was kind of like an opener with people, and I was very proud of it. I enjoyed showing the photos of it, and when you're adding substances and being in the party life, like I sometimes don't know how I made it through college. I somehow passed, but my main focus was just on partying, and that's exactly what I did. Yeah. But it's interesting. I've always been like a very, in a sense, extreme person. I would go down one rabbit hole and
you go deep.
I'd go deep. Yeah. And then I would come to a point where I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I don't really like this anymore. It's not connecting with me anymore. And then I'd go the other way. And usually the other way always went back to like partying, because I guess there's a sense of like safety. And if you think about it, a lot of people that are partying, they're trying to fill a void. Yeah. They're missing something, and they're wanting friends. They're wanting a social interaction. And you get a lot of that. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I never want to deny that I didn't have fun. Yeah. And I don't regret that. But then same thing, like after 2 years of doing that, I was like, what are we doing here? I don't want this anymore. And so I actually met a guy who was doing bodybuilding, and I was like, I think I want to do it again. So I got back into it. But this time I wasn't, because you become very lonely when you do bodybuilding, because you're on such a precise schedule. You're spending 4 or 5 hours in the gym.
You're eating.
The way you eat. Yeah. You're not doing a lot of social interactions. And, at the end of the day, you're mixing two lives, because your real life doesn't stop when you decide to do bodybuilding, and it's very, very strict. And so it was nice having someone that understood that. And so I think we did it for almost 2 years, and I did about 3 more shows. And after nationals, I remember walking off the stage, and it was almost like windshield wipers or a veil came lifted off. Yeah. And I started crying. I'm like, what am I doing? This is not me.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Were those are those big aha moments, but was there any thing that led up to that moment to give you a sign that this was actually not for you? Absolutely. I think that even though at this time I did not know who God was, I believe that the Holy Spirit was with me this whole entire time, guiding me. And when I would get too far, it started to nudge me. And when it came to the bodybuilding, I didn't have any social life. I barely had any friends. I would just do the same thing over and over again. I would look at my partner at the time and just be like, I don't really see a future with you. So I would say there's a lot of different things. I'm also a huge foodie. Yeah. And not being able to enjoy food was miserable. Chicken. Yeah.
Chicken, broccoli, turkey, like just the boring
the same
things.
stuff
Protein
over and over
powder.
again.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it's so interesting how you were pursuing the path that you felt like, okay, I'm good at this. I get compliments for this. This is where I'm validated in the world. So you naturally pursued what made sense. And yet it felt like it just wasn't it. Like it wasn't, because I imagine there's a lot of highs with that. But then once the high comes down, what do you have?
I'm like, oh, snap. I have to figure out my life. I have to completely re-navigate, pivot to find something else that's going to give me that satisfying feeling inside. And I've had to do that a couple times. And, you know, what's interesting is each time it's left me, I like come to the end of it unfulfilled. And I'm like, not necessarily like, dang, I just wasted 2 years.
Yeah.
But because I've had to figure out my life the whole entire time, and I've never had the guidance of, you know, maybe this is what I see within you. Maybe this is the direction you should go. I've always had to do like this bird's eye perspective on myself of like, what am I good at? What is this? And, you know, a lot of that did come through my looks. So that's why I went down these paths. But at the end of these paths, I was just like, well, this wasn't it. Now we got to try to find the next thing. And there was always like a moment of like, dang.
Yeah.
Well, this wasn't for me. It was fun, but like I don't have that feeling inside. And so we got to figure out the next thing.
And this is where I've heard lots of different pastors talk about we have this like God-sized hole in us that only God can fill. And so a lot of us who don't have a relationship with Jesus end up running from thing to thing to thing, trying to find the fulfillment. And especially when there's an abandonment wound, it leaves an emptiness, which really is meant for us and God to step into, right? Because we're called to love ourselves, love our neighbors as ourselves. And so we're meant to step into loving ourselves, believing we're worthy as Jesus loves us. But if you don't have either of those, then you're just reaching for this thing and that thing and this thing to fill you, and it's never enough. And it feels like that's what you came to, is like, okay, I'm getting first and second place. I look amazing. Guys want me. I'm a bodybuilder. And so
there's still this little like void in my heart that's like, we're not fulfilled. There's something missing.
Yeah. So you're leaving bodybuilding, or you just had that competition and you feel this. So what'd you do then?
So we broke up, and then that is kind of when I just went back down to the party life. You know, I wanted the social interactions. I wanted to feel included. I wanted a sense of community. And so I fell in that rabbit, which I think that was the main opener for starting to live a very sinful life within lust.
Yeah.
So I had met a girl who I became really close with, and I knew that she had this like dark secret that I was always like very curious about. But as we became closer, I started to unravel that secret. And she was a sugar baby.
Okay, so what is that?
So a sugar baby is someone who is financially provided by from usually an older man or woman. I mean,
like a sugar daddy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So you're like the baby of the relationship. You're taken care of usually financially and you're usually giving something, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, you know.
It's like a trade.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I was very curious, and she was definitely doing things stuff that I had never even like heard about. And, you know, not to get too deep, but I guess we should go that way.
That's what this is about.
Yeah. So one of the things that she would do was, you know, she had a long history of sugar daddies. And so I had a sense of trust in her.
Yeah.
Of if I just decided to start doing this, she could, in a sense, like mentor me, and she would point me in the right direction, and I would be able to not make as many mistakes as if I did it all myself. But she was very extreme with it. She enjoyed a lot of sexual violence. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, a lot of things of what she was doing, I was like, okay, not for me. Like, very intriguing, but not for me. But she definitely helped me because I was like, okay, I survive myself. I support myself. I do everything myself. Like, I would love some help, you know, especially like if I just have to go to dinner with someone and just look pretty, like, okay. And at that time as well, I had actually blown up from competing. I didn't reverse diet correctly. So I put on a lot of weight. I had also just gotten my breast augmentation.
Yeah.
And so I was very inflamed in my body. Yeah. I was just eating anything and everything. And so I also didn't feel myself. I didn't feel pretty. And so I needed that external validation in order to feel, I guess, good about myself.
Yeah.
So she helped me get into all of that. And I did that.
So can I just ask how you went from that kind of epiphany with bodybuilding to saying yes to sugar babies?
It was a new direction. And as I explained earlier, I feel like I go into these extremes of like, I go down a path that like could potentially be good. I'm being good. I'm not doing drugs. I'm not doing any substances. I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah.
But it's like, I get to a point where I'm like, it's not me.
Yeah.
And because I guess like partying in a sense comes easy.
Yeah.
Or like in falling into sin comes so easy.
Yeah.
I would just naturally gravitate that way. And just because it's not like I asked for these people to come in my life, but it just like somehow happened. And I was like, okay, well, this is exciting. I've always also been someone like kind of quote unquote, do it for the plot.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to highlight that you said that you felt like you could get some help.
Oh, yeah.
That seems like a huge piece. And that's that, like, I have to do it on my own belief, right? And so then it's like, oh, someone could help me and I don't have to, I can do things that I'm already maybe like open to doing on some level. Great. So that makes a lot of sense how that transition happened.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, because I moved out when I was 21 and I never got money from my mom. Once my parents' relationship split up, I never got money from my stepdad.
Yeah.
And so because I was having to do everything myself, that was hard. Yeah. It's hard financially taking care of yourself, living by yourself, paying all your bills, and you don't have anybody to lean back on. And that's another thing is I always had pride of never calling like my grandma or anyone to ask for money because, you know, if I got myself in a situation, it's because I got myself in that situation.
Sure.
But, you know, just you want to enjoy your childhood, you want to enjoy your early teens, but then I also have to be so responsible. And so for me, she was making $10,000 a month.
Yeah. That was...
I mean, even now, like, that's a good chunk of money.
Sure. Yes.
As a single woman, I just, like, immediately you hear that and you just think, oh, I could feel so much more peace if I made that money. Yeah, I wouldn't have to stress about rent. I wouldn't have to stress about bills. I wouldn't have to stress if, like, you know, emergency comes up. And I also know that financially, I've never been the most like literate because I never got that experience from, you know, mentors or influences such as my mother.
Sure.
So I was never really like, I was smart with my money, but I didn't know how to save, invest, and, you know, all that. So then also thinking that, okay, if I have an older man in my life, like he could potentially become a mentor. He could potentially teach me the things that I need to be taught.
Like a father figure.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, it's real.
Absolutely. And so I had one, and it was like just a weekend Las Vegas trip. It was like just a wild experience, but I came back and I was like, okay, whatever, like not for me.
Yeah.
And I did end up having a sugar daddy. It was probably like 5 total dates.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got some things out of it. I got like quote unquote an allowance, but I always felt very uncomfortable and I was always having to drink on it. It was just like this weird dynamic. Yeah. And I got a lot of praise from him and I felt really cool. Yeah. And, you know, I was going to fancy restaurants I like hadn't gone to. I was getting to go to Gucci. I was getting, you know, allowance, but in return, I definitely had to do things that made me uncomfortable. But because of alcohol, I could, in a sense, like hide it, look past it. But, the next day I always felt like shit.
Yeah. And this is where like alcohol, substances allows us to betray ourselves without really fully feeling the effects of that, right? You knew you were uncomfortable, and yet you didn't know what the other solution was at that point. You're like, I need money, and this seems like it could be helpful. And so that was helping you to just say, okay, I can handle this. And yet it sounds like you didn't stay very long.
Yeah. So this is another situation where I believe God was in my life without me knowing God was in my life. So it was, let's just say, like, we had gone on 4 dates, and each one of these, they were at either like an external place, whether it be a restaurant or a hotel. And this was the first time of me going over to his place. So I was extremely nervous. I get over there. I am sober because I drove and I can't drink and stuff. So I remember getting there, and this happened so many years ago that I don't remember the exact of what happened. But long story short, I get there. Of course, I was going there to do physical activities.
Yeah.
And he could tell how uncomfortable I was. And again, I couldn't drink. And so I couldn't, in a sense, like hide it.
Yeah.
And, I'm trying to get through the uncomfortable because I can tell that he senses it. And then it's like, it's about to go down or whatever. And he just like stops me and he's like, you need to just go home. Like, I can't do this.
Thank God.
Right. And he could just tell how uncomfortable he was, which I appreciate that he didn't make me do anything that he could tell I was uncomfortable with. And I'm so thankful that like God intervened to get me out of that situation. And what's funny is at the time I was so heartbroken. Because I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, I don't know. I'm just like off for tonight. Like, I don't know what's going on. And he was like, you need to go handle yourself and like figure out whatever's going on. And then we'll see if this continues or not. Yeah. It did not continue forward. And again, I was like very like hurt, but I also was like excited that it was ended because I knew how comfortable I was doing all this. It didn't feel right. It didn't stick with me, but I knew I was doing it for the money. Yeah. But there comes to a point where it's like, how much are you going to give away for money? How much of yourself are you going to give away for money? And I just had gotten to a point where I couldn't do it anymore. And I was just so thankful that the situation happened. And so I knew that things were going to be hard. I knew I was going to be stressed, but I needed to find something else. And at the time I did have a job. I was serving at the time, but when you have a friend that's making $10K, of course you start looking at money. I think she was definitely like a door opener of the possibility of making more money because I have never been around people who have made that much money.
How old were you at this point?
24 or 25. Yeah. One of those. And me and that girl, we ended up falling out, which now that I'm able to look back, it's funny how God works. Yeah. I thought we were getting really close and I wasn't a priority to her. And I'm very particular on my values within friends. And I'm very understanding of situations come up, but if you're not going to let me know about the situation, how do I know? Yeah. And if you can't be an adult and communicate with me and apologize and just, move on from the situation, like that's not a worthy friend to me. So we ended up, ending our relationship. And after I decided that this makes me feel gross inside, I don't like this anymore, I ended up finding a marketing agency to work with, which they were Christians.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, like I said, it was like the lowest of my lowest. And I just knew I was craving community. I was craving people who were like me, who thought outside of the box, who were intelligent, who were entrepreneur spirits, who were kind-hearted and welcoming. And I was just craving that. I remember calling my mom one night and just crying on how much I wanted community. Yeah. And people who were going to help me become better. And because they always say, the 4 5 people that you surround you with, you become the 6th person.
Yeah.
So I met these people through a couple other friends, and I was working. Well, I was first doing like an affiliate program with him, so it was all commission only, but it was very like MLM style, so multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't obsessed with, but at the time I was like, I gotta make money somehow. And so it was nice because it was remote. I was able to do it from the comfort of my home. Yeah. But I'm not really good at sales. And that is where I found that one out. And, you know, I was not doing great. And but I was becoming so close with the internal team. And one day he asked me to basically be his like personal assistant / social media person that like, you know, ran his social media. Yeah. And I was making no money. I was making $1,600. That's what I like started off. Or no, I'm sorry. It was $2,000 a month. And my rent was $1,600.
Oh, wow.
So I did put a lot of things on credit cards at the time, but the way I thought about it was, this is putting me in a better direction in which I was going in. Yeah. And I could probably learn so much through these people. And, you know, I just got to take the plunge. Just take the jump. Let's see what happens. So I was working with them for a while, and I really liked that they were Christian. I was open at the time. I really was like, I believe in the universe, new age spirituality. Yeah. Like I started journaling a lot more.
That's a gateway to Christianity.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of times for people.
Absolutely. And so I started really just diving in, being curious. A lot of the, you know, internal team, they were Christians as well. And so they would open up to me and tell me things. And I had gone to a church for a couple times, but I wasn't happy there. Funny enough, I had asked the universe at the time, like, I'm not happy, make something happen. Like, if I shouldn't be here anymore and I don't want to be here anymore, like, do something.
So we're talking like suicidal thoughts?
No. As in, like, get me away from this job. Like, either open up a new door.
I see.
That's going to fulfill me more.
Okay.
Or just something.
My psychologist brain went, wait, what? I'm not happy anymore. I don't want to be here.
Okay. I just didn't want to be at the job anymore. Okay. Because, again, I wasn't the owner. I was just not making a lot of money. I didn't see the potential growth. And I think he saw it as well. He saw that I wasn't in my like lane of genius. Yeah. And that I was kind of doing it just to do it and just like lingering on type of thing. And I don't think that there was really a position for me any longer. Yeah. And funny enough, on Valentine's Day of whatever year it was, he fired me. And at the time, I was extremely, extremely hurt. But I was also like, wow, okay, universe, like, you're real.
Well, isn't it powerful how we have these moments of seeming rejection outwardly, but it's redirection of God is saying, you know, because God's with us whether we acknowledge him or not, because he's omnipotent, he's everywhere, and he created us. So it's like you felt maybe rejected at the time, just like you did with that sugar daddy, but it's God redirecting you on the path he would have you go, even though you were calling him universe.
Right. And it's funny because, again, it's another man rejecting me.
Yeah. Yeah. And even though you had all those panels of men who were affirming you in bodybuilding.
To a certain extent, because also, yes, you're getting a certain, you know, place, but it is very political. And you still have critiques you can learn from. So your glute tie-in could be way better. Your shoulder definition could be way better. Yeah. So it's like, you're getting praise, but you're also getting like, go work on these things.
Yeah. And that's what you will focus on when the core wound is there. Dad left, abandonment. Then the focus consciously or unconsciously will be, men leave. I'm not good enough. I'm being critiqued. And you'll grab onto that.
I mean, there was so much of like, okay, I can become so much better. I'm not enough, so I need to be better. Right. I need to get better. Yeah. And so it was always like this. It felt like a race of like, okay, there's more levels I can obtain. I can change my character to become way better, so that, you know, people around me will see that. Yeah. So it was almost like I was my own project, basically.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. So you get fired, and where did that lead you to?
So this is where, you know, we were going down a good path.
Yeah.
We were trying.
Yeah. We were trying.
We were trying so hard. But this is where I'm like, well, we're going to start going the other direction. So during this time, it's when COVID starts to get brought up a little bit more and more. Yeah. And I'm like, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? I don't want to go get, like, I rather, because I've always been very entrepreneur-like. I've always understood the thought of I could do something from home, remote, and then, you know, you get paid from it. Like, I've always been very interested and intrigued with social media and and marketing and all that. Yeah. And, you know, as COVID is coming, I start to see OnlyFans, that blue and white website.
I didn't even know the colors. Okay.
Yeah. The more you know.
Yeah, I did not
So
know.
I started seeing that a lot, and I just dove into like research of like, what is this all about? Like, what are people doing on there? Because it got its popularity from porn stars. That's really where it came from, because Patreon had switched their terms of service and made it very clear of like no more nudity. Oh. And so
I didn't know there was nudity on Patreon.
Yeah, like towards the beginning, because they didn't want to be known for that. So they actually, you know, changed their terms, and a lot of people that were making, you know, money through a paywall through Patreon ended up going to OnlyFans, and that's where it like kind of blew up. And, you know, the hype at the time was you don't have to be a porn star. You can just be your everyday girl and make money off your body. But you're doing it from the comfort of your home. So you don't have to do what sugar babies do of going to someone, putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, maybe not secure situations. And again, like the highlight was comfort of your home. Yeah. So I was definitely intrigued by it, but I really had to sit and think about this, because I knew that making this decision was going to be very pivotal for me. Yeah. And so I really thought about it. I now look back, and I had a guy friend at the time who was very encouraging about it. He and I had a very sinful relationship. And so, you know, I was grateful that I was able to talk to someone and like have someone. And I knew that he, you know, his intentions were always good with me. Yeah. But with me, he was definitely a motivating factor of like, yeah, you can do it. Oh my gosh, you would do so good at it. Like, you're so intriguing. You're a redhead. You're hot. You're this. And so again, feeding the ego, feeding that identity. Yeah. And, you know, it also goes back to financial, the potential. I could sit at home and make this much money. Are you kidding me? Yeah. And then also with like COVID coming up, like, what do I have to lose? Like, people.
Yeah. And this is such a big thing, because Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So you had this friend who, you know, was encouraging you and sharing with you the positives of it. And it was literally like hitting all the things that you wanted: the entrepreneurship, the working from home, the making the money, you know, and this is how, when we don't have God in our lives, Satan will give us things that seem really alluring and exciting and like the right thing to do in the world, because it's hitting all those areas. And it's just so powerful, because of course it's like, it's a seduction, it's a temptation. And without God, it's like hook, line, and sinker. You're going to do it because it seems like it's the right thing to do. It fit everything you needed.
And it was an easy route. I don't have to put that much effort into taking photos and videos. And I'm going to make how much money? You know?
Yeah. Well, because you were already kind of good at that. That was already your thing. So, yeah. Okay. So how did that evolve?
So I make the plunge. I say, all right, let's do this. And then I start doing it. I started it like March. I forget what day it was, like 19th or something. And in the first month, I made $300. And I was like, oh, this is instant gratification. Like, this is awesome. The second month, I think I made $3K. And I was like, are you kidding me? And during this beginning, I definitely want to emphasize, like, I was so uncomfortable. I was very nervous of like putting myself out there, especially like my Instagram at the time had people who I went to high school with, middle school with, like since making that, I didn't make a separate Instagram, which I should have, I guess, you know, like that to a lot of people probably would have been the smarter route, but I didn't. And so I'm putting myself out there through like people who see me in a certain light. Yeah. Now I'm like, you know, click my OnlyFans and come see more of me type of thing. And so I was definitely uncomfortable, but I just kept pushing through of like, well, these people aren't paying my bills. These people don't know my situation. If I can make money, which I was like, wow, this is great. Yeah. So I started doing that, and that's when like COVID hit, and then everything gets shut down. And then I had like another of like, no one's making money. I'm making money, because that's when people are on their phones the most.
I was going to say, you don't have to go out to do this.
Yes.
So,
yes. I continue doing that. I'm having gratification, but there was still something lacking because it didn't take me that much time to like market myself, post a picture, post a video, create content. Like, at the grand scheme of things, like it's not very, you don't have to put a lot of effort into it. Yeah. And so at the time I had a girlfriend who was working for this guy selling marijuana, and she was doing like a delivery service. And this is how naive I was. So I told her, because during COVID, I had like dabbled with smoking weed. My mom has smoked weed my whole entire life. And so was never gravitated to it. Yeah. And so during COVID, I was like, I'm curious. Like, I have a friend that's working for a guy, good prices. Like, let's just try it out. So I had gotten like some gummies, and I was like, you know what? Like, if he ever needs, I have time. Like, if he ever needs some help, like, just let him know that I'll like come work for him and stuff. Yeah. Well, I ended up going to work for him. I thought this was 100% legal, because in California, marijuana is legal. Yeah. But doing it out of a home is not so much. Is not. Yeah. So as I'm doing OnlyFans and making money that way, I start working for what people call it trapper. Started selling marijuana, and I started off at like a delivery level, and I just like got into a relationship, but me and this guy, like the owner of it, like got closer and closer, and he saw like my work ethic, and I just like, you know, started working more. Yeah. Things happened with the other girl. She ended up leaving. I was making more money than I've ever made before. I mean, my best
between
month,
the two.
Yeah, like my best month was 13,000. And this is in the middle of COVID when no one is making money, and I am living off this like the best, like this fantasy world of everybody's like scared of what's going on. I, you know, not that I like could care less, but I don't trust our government on many different things. And so I wasn't scared. I take care of myself. I worked out. I didn't see the problem with it. And so I was living on this high. Yeah. And I'm making all this money. I'm able to pay off like debts. Then I slowly started smoking weed, like slowly but surely. Like I would only do it at home. Yeah. It just started off with gummies. Then, you know, you become a product of your environment. And so when you have so many people around you smoking weed, it's kind of like, oh, well, if they can do it, like, so can I. Yeah. And so like gradually I started smoking weed, which, you know, definitely helped with making the OnlyFans content. And yeah, I just started to ride on that. I was living my best life. I felt so empowered because it's like I'm making money easily off my body. I'm also selling marijuana. I'm getting it for free. It's really not a bad drug. Like, it's so much fun. When I smoke, I go into this like positive, fun life. Like, all my worries just went away, and I was just so happy. And then, you know, when you're working for a trapper, because of their own insecurities and way they think about money, it's such an uphill thing, and they're getting into fights and violence. And I was like, okay, I don't know about this. And I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? OnlyFans is doing really well for me. And I had gotten to this place where like, I didn't care what people thought. I could do anything. I figured it out, is honestly what I felt. Like,
did you really believe that you didn't care what people thought, or were you numbing yourself through marijuana and other things?
No, there was definitely a point where I did not care. I was like, this is who I am, take it or leave it. You know, I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's perfectly fine. But, You know, when I'm at a point where I'm making 10K every month and I'm able to help out my mother, I do not care what people think.
So this is important because the enemy will tempt us with things, and you were making money now at this point, like your friend had been, to where that money was validating what you were doing. And so you felt justified, like this is good because, and I don't care because I'm making this money. And this is how we know something becomes an idol for us, which you didn't know at the time. But it becomes an idol because it's what we hang our identity on. Like, hey, I'm making this money, it must be good. And that's how it's so deceiving in the world, is you can be having like big houses and you can have the nice things and the Gucci and the Prada and the money, but it doesn't mean your heart is right with the Lord. It doesn't mean your character is even right with the Lord, right? So that's really powerful, that can be like a trap. So it sounds like you're at that point riding high. Like, what happened?
So I decided to move to Vegas. Mm-hmm. I was really over living in Huntington Beach, and I didn't want to be too far away from my mom because me and my mom just have this like certain bond, which eventually I'm sure we'll have an episode of. Some
moms.
Yes, moms. And so I didn't want to be too far, but I also wanted to kind of get away so that I could like be my own person. And I had one friend living in Vegas, and I was like, well, Sin City, I'm already doing this. I'll probably be more accepted. I'll probably get more jobs, more opportunities. Like, why not? So I moved to Vegas. I stopped working with that trap guy, but then I was still going back and forth from Huntington to Vegas because of my mom. Yeah. And the trap guy ended up offering me a ton of money to come back. He got me back. And so I knew I had that consistency because with OnlyFans, you know, some months were better than other months. It just depended on like how I marketed myself. And so having that sense of security, I was like, oh, okay. So I ended up going back, and I was doing, you know, back and forth, making, you know, good money. I wasn't really spending, and it was still during COVID during this time. And so it was nice because I was around fun people, entrepreneur spirits. Like, again, as you said, like I had finally gotten everything I wanted. Yeah. And again, I was like living in this fantasy world, and I was like, nothing could go wrong. Right. Like I had done it. Yeah. But during this time I wanted a partner, and I couldn't find the partner in which I deserved, in which I wanted. And so like during that time, I knew that was a unfulfilled part of my life. And I knew that doing OnlyFans, you know, one of the biggest things is like, who's going to date you if you do OnlyFans? And, you know, the defensive side of that is, well, I'll be with someone who, you know, accepts it. I'm not going to be with someone who doesn't accept it. And so a lot of men are accepting of it. And so it's not that like I didn't have any relationships, but, you know, now, like I don't want to have a relationship that enables that allows that. Correct. You know, but at the time, because I'm doing everything myself, I'm so far in my masculine, like those are, I attracted men that did not care, which, you know, results in them not really caring about me, which, you know, only hurt me in the long run. Sure. And so, you know, I lived on that high for a while, and it just got to a point where, you know, the trapper guy, he's not paying on time, and I'm like, all right, this is my time to get out. So I got out, and right before like I fully just packed everything to fully move back to Vegas, I met a guy who was like in the world, but he was like just very level-headed, down to earth, and I felt like he kind of helped pull me back down from like this high to like level me out, but he also understood what I was doing. He was in the business, so I thought, oh, okay, well maybe this is going to be good. So I ended up leaving to go to Vegas, but then we started a relationship. So we were doing a long distance relationship, which, you know, it was nice because he helped me see a lot of things and helped me come back to reality. But there were a lot of things that I knew it just wasn't for me. But because I became comfortable, it was safe. I knew he was safe. I decided to stay. And so we had about like a 2-year relationship, and like towards the end of the relationship, I didn't want to do OnlyFans anymore. Yeah. I had gotten to a point of, I'm living in Vegas, and so I'm still supporting myself. I'm doing OnlyFans, but OnlyFans is kind of oversaturated. I also just don't want to be known for my body anymore. And the thing that really got me to really start thinking about like me being on OnlyFans and what I'm doing is I don't have a huge family, but I have a cousin who I don't really fully know. I mean, like, of course I know her, but I don't see her that often because I was living on the West Coast. She lives on the East Coast, and she had found my social media. And that was like my big thing, because I didn't grow up around family. I didn't grow up around a lot of kids, so I never really thought about kids. Yeah. And all of a sudden I see that she followed me, and I immediately was like, oh my gosh, no, like block, like all that. And one night,
so you blocked her?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't need her seeing that stuff. But like me telling you that, and that's what I thought. I was like, okay, wait a second.
It was like a little wake up call.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so if I just started thinking about kids and how kids is the foundation of everything. And that, for a long time, my view of like, if kids find my social media, well, the parents should do a better job.
But when it was your family, it suddenly...
It hit me so hard of like... because I know she looks up to me. And I just had this epiphany of like, I would never want her to do the things that I do. Because one thing about OnlyFans, you're very much selling your soul. You know, a lot of people don't talk about, you start off with, these are my boundaries. I'm never going to go past my boundaries. But then you have people, these men who are mentally unstable. They start pushing you and requesting things outside of your boundaries.
Sure, of
and
course.
You because many, I'll just say for myself, was in it for the money. I start like, oh, but that's an extra $500. Oh, that's an extra like $300. And so it makes you start thinking about like, it's just this like one time. It's not that big of a deal. Right. It's not that much. And so you start doing things that pushes your boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
So I fell into like breaking a lot of my boundaries. And also because I was with someone who knew of like the industry and stuff, like it got to a point where I was just thinking like, okay, I told myself from the very beginning I wasn't going to do this. Now I have my cousin following me, which I would never want her to go down this rabbit hole of what I've gotten. Like, I actually do care what people think, because I can never go to a conversation and when people are like, hey, what do you do? Oh, I do OnlyFans. Oh, I sell my body. Like, it just like, there was something in me that was just like flashing. Yeah. Like, whoa, what are we doing? We're going down the wrong path. And so I knew I just needed to get off ASAP, but I had nothing else lined up.
Yeah.
And because it was so easy, and because I also have this external person who is close to me saying like, don't just like give this up, because like, what are you going to do afterwards? Yeah. So I finally just got to a point where, because I also had gotten to a point where I could only create content if I was high. And I was just like, I was so miserable inside. Yeah. I was so miserable. And I just decided that, okay, nope, I'm done. And so I got off. It felt so good to get off. Amen. But that only lasted for so long. Yeah. Because nothing else was lining up. I couldn't get another job. And so to me, with the universe at the time, I was just like, maybe I get back on. Like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. I need the comfort of money. I hate stressing about bills again.
And of course, just highlighting, you didn't have God in your life at this time. And so you were relying all on your own strength and trying to figure it out. And the enemy ensnares us by, he's giving you the glitz and the glam up front, making it feel like this is a great thing, and slowly sucking your soul and you feeling miserable and addicted to marijuana psychologically, right? At this point, I can't do X, Y, and Z without it. And that is how the enemy works, is he gives you something shiny up front, but it's always for a price.
Absolutely.
And so you were thinking, maybe I need to go back.
Yeah, and so I did go back. I was more miserable than I've ever been. And, you know, I'm trying to be smart about it. And as I'm on it, I'm trying to find other jobs and stuff, but nothing's like hitting home for me. Nothing feels right. I have this same, you know, the relationship I was in at the time of like, you know, like just keep doing it until you figure out something else. But there wasn't like a very masculine like help from that. I felt like I was going back to like, I'm drifting away from you. We're definitely seeing differently. Like I need to figure this out, which, you know, I'm grateful that we were in a sense doing long distance so that I could really separate myself to like fully focus of like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so during that time of still doing it, I decided to, cause like I'm slowly changing. I'm like, what is going on? I don't want to do this. Like, what's the next thing for me? Entrepreneur spirit, love social media. I decided to start a podcast. And I'm just going to be like open and honest and real about who I am, what I'm doing, my thoughts, like things that I've learned. Interview, because I was doing atmosphere modeling as well. So I was meeting a lot of women as well who have like crazy stories. I'll invite them on. And so I start doing that. I'm like starting to change my mindset. I'm getting back into better habits. I'm journaling again. I'm trying to get off marijuana. I did it for 6 months, but it like came little monster inside of me. I came back. I really enjoyed it. You know, I'm trying to do all these things. I found a fitness studio I become obsessed with. So I'm like really working out again. My body's like just top notch. I'm feeling good. Like, so I'm like, as miserable as I am, I'm like building these habits.
Yeah.
And this is where God decided that, nope, I am taking you and you are coming to me and no more of this.
Yeah. Amen.
So what had happened was the car I had at the time, the transmission broke during COVID. And long story short with that, there was no insurance. I had to pay out of pocket. I went to like a transmission place. They fixed it. Well, what was it? Like 3 years? It was literally like right after the warranty expired. My transmission went out again. I'm not making any money.
Yeah.
I know the cost of a transmission.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
It was, and what's crazy was, my mom was, you know, she has her own journey and she was moving from California to Ohio and she was staying with me a week. I was taking her to the airport when it happened.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you know, we'll get into later, but it was just really interesting how that had happened. She had come for a week. Everything was perfectly fine. And on my way to take her to the airport, it just goes out.
Yeah.
This made me feel thrown against the wall and like, what do I do? And I just felt so alone. I felt so helpless because my mom's not there. I have no one. I don't know what to do. Yeah. And, you know, I take my car and basically, you know, the story is I have to fix my transmission or I don't have a car. Yeah. Okay, well, I have no money. Yeah. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like my car is how I make money to get me from point A to point B. Sure. Because I was doing, you know, atmosphere modeling and brand ambassador stuff. Yeah. And I can't even describe like the feeling I felt, but I had known like there was this little part of me of this is happening for a certain reason. I don't know it yet, but we're going to get through it, but this sucks. Yeah. So I went 30 days without a car, figuring out insurance, coverage, working with the mechanic. And during that 30 days, again, I was stuck at home. I couldn't go work out. I was just so stuck like with my internal thoughts. I live by myself. Yeah. I'm losing it. I come across because I'm trying to, you know, not smoke weed. I'm also trying to become better. And I basically wrote to myself like a contract with myself, which I have done a couple times in my life. And during this time, I wanted to put away social media, not endlessly scroll, because comparing yourself with other people is not great to, you know, your mind whatsoever. Right. And I came across this book called The Dream Giver. It's about a person. It's kind of like fictional, or is it non-fictional? It's like a story. So non-fictional. Yeah. And it's about this person named Nobody that lives in a bunch of nobodies. And he goes on this big adventure because the Holy Spirit calls upon him to like go on this adventure. And he's having to lean on God to guide him and like just to fully surrender to him. And I've had this book for years, but I've never read it.
Yeah.
And finally I read it, and I like, obviously what I was doing with like believing in the universe, charging my crystals, doing my tarot cards, it wasn't working. And I read this book that just spoke to me so much and just got me of like, there's something more. There's something so much more out there that I need to like give up. So as this time of like, I'm doing all this, again, like I'm off of OnlyFans at this time, but I'm also not making any money, and because I can't drive anywhere. And so I want to do, you know, something remote, and I end up finding remote sales, which is online, remote. You can make a ton of money that way. And so I'm doing like a bunch of coursework during this time of like reading this book and, you know, trying to find a new avenue, bettering myself. And so I buy a course to learn all about remote sales. I know I'm not great at sales because I had already known that through a, you know, previous experience with marketing, but I am like, hey, maybe this is my time. Maybe I've gotten better. I did OnlyFans. I had to market myself. I had to sell myself. Like, maybe this is it. So I do the course, and the second application I did was with a company called Flip Secrets. And they hired me, and it was like the day before my birthday. And I was like, wow, God, like, this is so cool. Like, something is working in my life. Like, we're doing it. Like, this is good. And also during this 30 days, I was trying to push myself I was just really pushing myself with the podcast. I made an ebook. Like, I was just really trying to better myself and focus on not going down a bad rabbit hole. Right. Even though like my life felt so broken and like, just again, up against a wall. What am I going to do? Just so lonely, everything. And so I start working for this company doing remote sales. It's commission only. And I'm loving it because it's like pushing me to become more. It's pushing me to better myself. I'm loving all the new information, but I'm not good at sales again. I'm not good at sales. But what was really cool and what really stood out to me about this company was that they did like a Bible study every single day after like the main meeting. And I was just like curious. And also I'm at my lowest, like, what's gonna change? Like, maybe this could help in some way or whatever. So I started doing like this Bible study, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool, you know, like, and I started like, you know, more consistently showing up. And I also start to get closer with one of the sales manager. We start to get more in depth of my past, which I approached this job of not including my past, not sharing with people my past. And so I was definitely nervous because I had also gotten to a point where I was ashamed of doing OnlyFans. And because it was a professional, you know, business, I just didn't want to be associated with that. So it was really hard for me to actually open up. But the manager, Ben, he was just very calm. He was easy to talk to. He made me feel just like it's okay to talk about your past. And so as I was getting closer with him, he was venturing me off to discover like a movie and, you know, books and stuff like that. And so he had me watch a movie called Father of Lights. Yes. And after I watched that, he asked me like what I thought about it. And I was like, oh, it was like really cool. And he said, well, you know, what do you think about like the main guy? And then I was like, you know, really cool. He's like, well, what if I told you that I have a connection with him? Would you want to talk to him? And I was like, I have nothing to lose. By all means, like, please, let's do this. And so he gave me his information, and the main guy, whose name is Ravi, he has a business where, you know, you can have a free introduction call, because again, I have no money at this point. So I'm like, if this guy wants money, like, I can't do it. So I was really excited that it was like a free call. I jump onto this call, and he starts, you know, telling me things about my life that maybe I didn't necessarily want to accept. And then there were other things where I was like, you're spot on type of thing. And, you know, I'm starting to cry in this conversation. You know, my mind's going everywhere. And this, at this point of having this conversation, I had been part of the company for at least a month and a half.
Yeah.
And with the consistency of the biblical, section that they have, I'm more open than ever to accepting God.
Yeah.
And at the end of this conversation, he asked me, like, do you want to say the Lord's Prayer and fully accept Jesus Christ as your Savior?
Wow.
And I'm kind of getting like chills about this. At this point in my life, like, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I'm so over going down this like spiritual journey of like new age and the universe. Like, it's led me here. Like, what do I have to lose? Like, there is nothing to lose.
Yeah.
If I go down this journey and it doesn't work out, okay, you know what? I learned my lesson type of way.
Yeah.
So I said the prayer. And I gave my life to Christ. And I remember getting off that phone call just thinking like, wow, okay, I never thought I would be here.
Yeah.
Because I never had God. I never had Jesus in my life. I never had a relationship. And so, one, I didn't know what this would look like.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay. And I just remember like breaking down, and, my life didn't get better right away by any means.
Right.
But there was a sense of peace that came, and there was a sense of, I'm excited to see what's next.
Yeah. And oh boy, was there a lot next for you.
It is crazy how fast my life changed.
Oh, yeah.
So I get a call from the manager, Ben, a couple days later. Honestly, it was probably like a day or two later.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I'm in trouble because I'm not great at sales. I'm also not really making money. So I'm trying to do a lot of brand ambassador where I'm working at conventions for companies, which take up your whole entire day. So like I had told them like, hey, I'm not going to be able to work this week because, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So I get a phone call from Ben, and I'm kind of freaking out. Like, oh, I'm about to be fired. Like, great. I'm just like having so much worry. And so he calls me, and he could tell on my, like, how hesitant I was. And he's like, I'm not firing you, but I have 3 things to talk to you about. And I was like, okay, good. But like, what are these three things?
Yeah.
And so one of the things, he wanted me to introduce me to his wife. So I met his wife, Chloe, who is an absolute
shout out to Chloe.
She is such an angel.
Yeah.
And then he was like, Thanksgiving was around the corner, because I gave my life on October 27th. And then, so Thanksgiving was around the corner. He had known through our previous conversations that I didn't really have much family and that I wasn't really going to be doing anything. So he's like, this is, kind of a big thing, but what would you say if I invited you to come to Georgia to spend Thanksgiving with me and my family?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, weird. Because of my previous experience with like sugar daddies and, stuff like that, I obviously did not see him in that way. I had just met as a wife, but I was like, ooh, I don't know. I did have, current plans, but it just like felt weird. And then, at first I told him no. And then in my head, I'm just thinking like, what do I have to lose? What do I have to lose? This is not a weird situation. Like, just say yes. And so after, some back and forth, I was like, you know what? I'll do it.
Yeah.
Cause he was like, I'll pay for everything. Like, you just come. I want you to like be a part of our family. And I just thought to myself,
so
like,
generous.
Yes, like, wow. Okay. Like, and then it also just gave me a sense of like, I kind of feel wanted, but in a family aspect, which is something that I've craved my whole entire life.
Yeah. Oh.
So I finally say yes, and then he's like, okay, one last thing. And I was like, okay, like, I mean, this is already so good. What more you want to add to this?
There's more. And
he said, have you seen this guy named Hunter? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, well, he's not part of the company, but he like does the financing for the company. And I was like, okay, cool. He's like, well, I talked to him, and what I want to do is I would love to invest in you. And he said that he is willing to help you with sales, because we both know you're not great at sales. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, okay, if this is what I get for saying yes to so many things, like, this is awesome. Like, absolutely. Like, this is great. And so before we ended the call, he actually had like a 3-week call with Hunter. So I like got to like kind of meet him. Yeah. And then, so life's going great. a week later, I'm now having someone who's helping me with, sales, which, our first conversation was on November 6th. And I was like, dang, I'm in a relationship, so I can't think too much, but like, you're a cute looking guy and you have extremely piercing blue eyes. Like, this is awesome. And, we had 3 conversations. I'm not thinking anything of it, but each time that we had a conversation, we would banter more about personal life. And I was like, oh, he's a cool dude. Like, awesome.
Yeah.
So during this time, as I'm like getting help and I'm also getting excited to go to Georgia for Thanksgiving, Ben had also sent me my very first Bible, which I still like, thank you so much.
Amen.
And so I started like opening the Bible and, it's looking like a foreign language, but I'm like really pushing myself to, dive into it. I started looking up the Bible app and just like trying to slowly understand this. And then, with the Bible part of the company, I'm telling them more and opening up to them more. They're directing me more. So I'm kind of giving like a pathway of like what to follow and feeling a little bit better. Like, I'm like, okay, this is such like a hard time in my life, but so many positive things are coming from this.
Yeah.
So then Thanksgiving comes around. I fly out with 2 other girls, that were also part of the company. One is Ben's sister-in-law and then another girl from the company. So it wasn't like just me, which made me feel a lot better inside as well.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking like, oh, this is going to be a great week of spending time with, this manager and his family. I'm so excited for what will unravel basically. And, we'll definitely get more into this in a future episode, but I find out basically that I haven't just been flown to meet Ben and his wife and family. I've actually been flown to meet Hunter because Ben had a dream of us getting married, and, the generosity of his heart. Oh my gosh, like to fly me and 2 other girls just to meet this guy to see if, we actually connect.
Like matchmaker premiere over here.
Absolutely. And I had no idea of anything going on this whole entire time until Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And,
that's a whole, and we will get into that because that's a whole story in and of itself.
And he's now my husband. So it worked out. Ben knew. And, since then it's just been all about changing my life, letting go of old identities that no longer serve me and just growing so strong with the Lord. And it's been such an incredible experience because I just get more on fire for the Lord. And with that has come so many like fruits.
Yeah.
And
just as a teaser, so like, what's the timeline of meeting Hunter, your husband, and actually getting married?
So our first interaction was on November 6th of 2023. And that was our first Zoom call. We have 3 Zoom calls. I come out for Thanksgiving of 2023. I find out on Thanksgiving everything that's been in operation. And what's crazy is everyone knew what was going on, including Hunter. I just had no idea.
Clue. Yeah.
I always tell people it's based, or like our love story is like a Hallmark rom-com.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
And so, so we meet Thanksgiving or that week, and then he flies me back out for Christmas of 2023. I stay here for New Year's, and that's when we decided, okay, we're getting married. I go back for a month. I come back January 28th of 2024, and I never left. I planned a wedding in 2 months, and we got married on March 16th, 2024. Which is so crazy because I saw myself maybe getting married one day, but I just had no idea, and just the way everything unraveled just blew my mind.
So I want to get into some specific questions about what's been the best thing about giving your life to Jesus.
The peace. The peace that comes because it's no longer I. I don't have to do all of it. I know I don't have to do it. I can lay my head down at night and, talk to God and say, these are the worries that I have. I surrender it to you. Please take it away. And I just always am given so much peace of like things will work out. And it's been incredible.
Yeah.
Like, I've never
Priceless.
felt this peace because I've been in survival mode my whole entire life. And especially since the age of 20, now being the age of 31, I didn't know this peace was possible.
Yeah. So beautiful. And what's been the most challenging part about giving your life to Jesus?
What a great question. Laying down my identity that I've constructed my whole entire life, letting go of that ego that once protected me, that no longer protected me, and rediscovering myself through God's eyes.
Yeah. Oh, that's everything. That God has an identity for you. And so you literally, that's what Galatians 2:20 is no longer I who live, but Christ. Like, we literally have to die to self. We have to let go of our identity to adopt who the Lord has us to be. That process, and we will have podcasts about that. That process is so painful.
And yes, painful.
So painful.
And it doesn't just happen overnight. You know,
No.
like there's been times where I'm like, all right, I'm good. I don't have any more. And then something else comes up and I'm like,
Yeah.
And, you know, something that I've been learning lately is like, just because you give your life to God and you fully surrender to Him doesn't mean that your life all of a sudden gets glorious.
Yeah.
You know, it's still challenging.
Yeah.
It's actually harder in my eyes because, you know, going down the route of a sinful life is an easier road, but it ends harder.
Yeah.
Whereas like once you give your life to Christ, like you have eternity with Him.
Amen.
Like, yes, we're on this plane for our time being to, you know, be a servant to Him. But like afterwards, like what we get, are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's unbelievable what Jesus did for us. It's indescribable. It's something we can never possibly repay. I know, we're both kidding. It's so much.
Yeah, I've been actually doing a lot of research to discover like that moment of Jesus being crucified and like just, you know, in the moment when He's crying out to God and like God is not part of Him. Yeah. And He's feeling all the sin in the world. Just like truly imagining that and like Him being just completely beaten up and just broken down to, you know, His core. Yeah. And carrying that cross.
And how brutal it was that we don't even like, nothing quite depicts how brutal it was.
Right.
You know?
Right. And I just often think, you know, which is such a blessing, you know, because at first when I did come to Jesus and I did accept Him as my Lord and Savior, I had so much shame of my past, you know, and I'm so thankful you were there for since the beginning. Yeah. You know, and I'm so thankful that we have established and created the relationship we've had because, you know, you've helped me realize that I don't have to be ashamed of my past, that it doesn't
define you. It doesn't define you.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing, is that we weren't meant to carry shame. And the Lord, that's why He went to the cross, was He took all of our sin and all of our shame and all of our rage and all of the stuff that we deserve. He took it on the cross for us, which is why we don't have to carry shame. And it says in Scripture, like, the Lord, He does not remember it. When He forgives us completely. He doesn't even remember what we've done. And that's also unbelievable of like how much He loves us. He's just pure love in that way. So yeah, there's been so much identity shifting for you. And I will say, like, you know, because it doesn't happen like this for everyone. You had such a massive turnaround, like from giving your life to the Lord. And then it was like, 6 days later, you met your husband. And he was kind of served to you on a platter a little bit. Yeah. You know, it was kind of like, hey, we have this guy who Holy Spirit told Ravi, like, this is her guy. And you finally have community and family and security, and you don't have to do it all on your own. And He's completely changed your lifestyle. Like, we haven't even gotten into that. But like, what did you do in 2024? What was that whole year about? like your lifestyle? What were you like getting involved in? Like sewing and baking bread?
I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I wasn't doing drugs anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you definitely were doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely just like laid my life, and it was really difficult because I had never felt peace, because in the past, peace for me, there was still so much going on. And so this past year, it was being able to relax within my own body, to feel peace, to grow closer with the Lord, and discover hobbies, and to leave my masculine behind to fully step into my feminine, which is still something that I'm learning.
It's healing.
To this day.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. I'm just so, there's so much more that we could get into, but I want to wrap it up with what's your favorite scripture and why?
Ooh, okay. So I am still learning scriptures, so I don't know it off the top of my head. So I'm going to read it. But when I first gave my life to the Lord, I soon met Hunter, and Hunter was someone who really helped me dive deep within the Bible. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was the parable of the lost son. And, you know, to briefly describe it, basically, this guy has two sons, oldest and a youngest, and the youngest comes to him and says, I want my share of your estate, takes his money, runs off, and does a bunch of sinful things, spends it and becomes broke, tries to get work, can't get work, or he does get work, but then he says, like, I'd be better if I was like a servant for my father. Goes back to his father. His father is so happy that he's home. And they have a big party for him. The older son comes back and is like, you wouldn't even do this for me, and I didn't take your money. I didn't do all this. Like, why are you throwing
The older son had been there with his dad the whole time.
Right.
Never left.
Right. And he's like, why have you never done this for me? And one of the statements that have always stood out to me, and I think that it goes along with my story, is Luke 15:24. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. And I think that it's just like fully, I was lost for so long. I didn't necessarily know that I was lost, but just how welcome and loved I have felt since giving my life to Christ has been so merry, so cheerful, so exciting, and it's been awesome.
Makes me cry. That's a good one. Okay. Well, Jessica, thank you for sharing your testimony. I know we have so much more we get to unpack, and we do, because now we have a podcast. So thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. And I'm just so excited that we're creating this space to have these real, authentic talks to show, like, the not so glamorous things, like the walks that we had before Christ, and then giving our life to Christ, and how that will transform, and the fruits that will grow from it. It's just I'm really excited for this, and I'm also really excited to get into your testimony.
So it's a big one.
It is. It is.
Well, thanks for joining us in 220 Gals, where your past doesn't define you, but your redemption refines you.
And we'll see you next week on Wednesday. Love you, gals.
Love you, gals.